Mary back there, she's with Kansas Gas and she's videoing our luncheon, so make sure you all behave. And thank you, I forgot to mention Delta Innovations was the first to sign up this year as our platinum sponsor for the festival. That's a $1,000 sponsorship, so we appreciate that. Well, don't worry, you'll have more opportunities to get signed up, so we'll be sending that out. Okay, well, with that, I'm going to ask Mike Martin to come up with Capital Electric and say a few words as our host and sponsor and soon to be president of the board. Soon, very soon.
All right, thanks everyone. Welcome to Capital Electric. We're happy to host this month's luncheon for the Fairfax Industrial Association. Our warehouse and support center has been in Fairfax since 2011. We had our office was up at 6 and Broadway, and we've been trying for years to get both of them combined. So this building became available, and we officially moved into here in November of last year. So we took this warehouse space and converted all this over in about 16,000 square feet of office space, and the remainder of the space is all set up for our warehouse and support operations. Capital Electric's been in business for 61 years. If you haven't heard about us, we handle all sizes and types of projects. We mainly serve industrial, healthcare, commercial, and low voltage systems. We got a service department that has over 30 vans to take care of small projects, emergency repairs, and preventive maintenance on electrical gear. Some of our landmark projects that you've probably heard of in the past was Union Station, the Arrowhead Stadium. We just completed Cambridge Tower from the University of Kansas Hospital. It's up on the hill. It's a 12-story new tower. And it became officially announced this week that we're on the KCI team to do the electrical construction. So we've put together a team of multiple electricals on it. It's going to be a fantastic project. So let's still look at a construction starting probably toward the end of the year.
Great. Thank you. It's so awesome to see what you can do with these buildings down here in Fairfax. I mean, you guys, you've been to Blackjack and seen all the things that they've done, and coming in here when I first walked in a few months ago, I was like, oh my gosh, this is beautiful. You can do so much. So thank you so much for hosting. And just so you know that we have plenty of food, I'm sure, still back there. So go back, get seconds, and come back. We've got all the drinks over here. We've got the dessert over here. Restrooms, I don't know if you saw, are just walking back towards the food. It's like halfway down on the left. So if you need that, that's there too. And it was funny when I was renting the speaker system, the guy's like, okay, so are they going to have any electrical cords or plug-ins? Like, well, it's Capital Electric, so I'm pretty sure they're going to be able to hook us up here. So anyway, thank you, and thank you, Adam, for helping out. All right, with that, I'm going to introduce our new mayor, David Albee, who just got sworn in January, and I'm sure has been very, very busy. So if you want to come on up, and let's all give him a round of applause.
You're not going to need volume.
I just want to make sure everyone can hear you.
Can everybody hear me?
Yeah. Okay.
Do you need me to use the microphone for
You're probably good.
without it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You got a good voice.
So I have a good voice because I was a teacher for 27 years, actually 31 if I include other times I taught. But probably have a good voice because I grew up in a family of 8. And I can tell you there is no wilting lily in my family whatsoever. So if you didn't step up and speak loudly, you were not heard and you were ignored, and no one in my family was ignored. In fact, I always tell the story, I'll get into this. I was the Dean of Students at Rockhurst High School for 19 years, which meant I handled the discipline and the attendance. But I was always said I was effective at that job because I was a real shit when I was in high school and in grade school. And in fact, growing up, my mom just got tired of me. I was number 5 out of 8, and my mom would send me with my dad to work, and my dad did legal work for the city before they had a city attorney. My dad and his firm had the legal work, a lot of legal work for the city. She would make my dad take me to work with her, and she said, you know, after David, in terms of discipline, after David I gave up. And I would remind her, yeah, but Dad didn't, because there were 3 more who came after me. And so Dad didn't give up on more kids. So I have quite the voice, and as you probably understand. So I walked in and I see that it's set up like a classroom, and that's dangerous for a teacher. I can tell you that right now. So, because a lot of you probably don't know me, or maybe are not from KCK, but obviously have business interests here, I thought it would be helpful to maybe introduce myself and some of my background. And so I will do that, and then I want to speak directly to what I think is the crux of the problems facing, or the challenge facing, and opportunity facing Kansas City, Kansas, Wyandotte County, which frankly is how do we grow our real estate tax base? That's simply that. It's always the case for any municipality, any city, any government. How do you grow the revenue generation for a city so that we can improve the quality of life for our citizens and for our businesses and for institutions? That's really the crux of the problem. It's never going to go away. That is it. The question is, how do you approach that? And KCK and Wyandotte County have some specific issues with that we have to be aware of. But I want to take some time, first of all, to congratulate again Daniel Silva and the team at the Chamber of Commerce, KCK, on a wonderful luncheon last week. If you were able to attend, you witnessed it. They did a wonderful job, and it was a great experience. So congratulations on a great. I also just want to take a moment to highlight, I'm wearing a little green ribbon, and this is to encourage folks to sign up to be organ donors. And you know, I've known many children or kids from Rockhurst High School over the years who have needed organ donations, and now my cousin's wife is actually online to receive an organ donation. So insofar as you can do that, I encourage you to do that. I thought it would be helpful just for me to put that out there. If one other person signs up as an organ donor, it has an effect. So let me go back. So I grew up in Kansas City, Kansas, in Wyandotte County, in the southern part of the county, in the area of Turner. When I grew up, when I was born in 1960, we were part of the Shawnee Township. And my grandfather, Leo Alvey, was head of the Shawnee Township, elected in 1932 by 1 vote, so votes do matter. And he was reelected through 1954, and at which point he resigned his position, and his son, my uncle Ed Alvey, was then elected to be head of the Shawnee Township. And my uncle Ed was then subsequently, in 1982, elected to the first city council form of government from the city, from the south side. And my mom's side of the family, my mother's grandmother or great-grandmother, somewhere back there, came to Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas in 1857. And so my dad's side of the family had been in the Turner area really scouting from the 1850s, but then settled in the late 1860s, and my mom's side of the family from 1857. So we have a long history in the county, in the city. My mom's grandfather, in fact, ran for mayor in 1910, lost. The story is that he carried 5 or 6 wards, but that they stuffed the ballot box in the north end and he was defeated. So whether that's true or not, that could just be sour grapes, but that's the story that they're sticking to. My father, in fact, in 1960, just 3 months before I was born, became the Justice of the Peace for the Shawnee Township. And growing up, I remember people coming to our home for court. And in fact, what had been the horse barn of my grandparents' farm became a garage temporarily, and then in 1960 was converted into the courthouse. And so twice a week, court would be held in the garage. And we had families or folks or couples would come to the house in the evenings and want the judge to marry them. And so we would have to stop what we were doing, be quiet, and you can imagine at that time there were only 6 of us. I can't keep count. Apparently Dad couldn't either, but there were 6 of us at the time, and we'd have to be quiet and go and watch the marriage. And actually, if we knew the couple, and we did most of them, we would stand on the porch and throw rice on the couple as they left. So, and there was no extra charge. My family has a long history of involvement in the community and really commitment to the community. And so, as it even says here on the bio, John Gibbs, for which Gibbs Road is named, was one of the early settlers in the Shawnee Township. And when he first established his homestead there, he built a school that was to educate white and black children. So this is 1869. And it was not well received, as you can imagine, by the other settlers in the area. And so they established their own school, or they took control of the school. And they subsequently built a school for black children just a little bit further south towards the Marion side of Turner. But he was involved. He helped establish Maple Hill Cemetery. Maple Hill, in fact, is named after his initiative to plant maples along Gibbs Road just to make something distinctive for the area. And again, on my mom's side, her grandfather established a meat market at what is now we're going to call, just so you all know, we're no longer referring to the building as the former EPA building. No longer, that's out of the lexicon. It is now being referred to as KU Med Downtown. And we'll get back to that later. But he had a meat market there where that building sits, and my mother grew up at 435 Barnett. And the house is still there, and my great uncle was the head of the Democratic Party during the 1930s. He was also the U.S. Attorney for the state of Kansas, appointed by Franklin Delano Roosevelt. My grandfather, John Gibbs, again on my dad's side, would always brag at the end of his life, towards the end of his life, his first vote for president was for Abraham Lincoln, and his last vote was for Teddy Roosevelt. And so we've always been a politically involved and committed family. And that's just the way we were raised, and that's the way we continue to raise our children. So I attended Savior of the World High School Seminary, which is 126th and Parallel, and decided that I wanted to pursue priesthood, but decided that I wanted to check out the Jesuits. And so I attended Rockhurst University for 2 years, and at that time then entered the Jesuits, and I was in the Jesuits formation for priesthood for 10 years. And I still wasn't ordained. They take a long time to form you, and they send you to school constantly. If you're not in a university, they'll bring the university professors to you. And so I did that for 10 years, and taught. Part of your formation is to go out and teach or to work, and I did that for 3 years at Rockhurst High School. Then I left after Rockhurst High School, went out to study theology in California, and discerned at that time that I don't think I'm going to be a very good priest. I began to see myself, that was the age of 29, I began to look at this, and I began to see myself at the age of 40, and I thought, I don't think I'm going to be very happy, and we don't need any unhappy priests. So at that time, I delayed my ordination, with, obviously the support of my community, and in the meantime, I met my wife. We met at Juvenile Hall outside of Oakland, California. And I won't tell you who was incarcerated, who was not. No, actually, we were both volunteering there with Oakland Catholic Charities to visit the children in the units and to talk with them. So we met and ultimately married. We decided that we could not afford California, not doing what we did, and decided I wanted to come back to Kansas City, Kansas. And my wife being loving and adoring father. So we have 5 children. And I came back and I was hired to be the Dean of Students at Rockhurst High School, and I did that job for 19 years, taught at the same time a little bit, and then for the last 4 years I was the assistant principal for faculty development, professional development and faculty formation. Many years ago, was appointed to be on the Planning and Zoning Commission. I did that for 5 years for the Unified Government. And then I ran for the Board of Public Utilities in 2009. And I served on the Board of Public Utilities for 8.5 years. Served about 3/4 of a year as interim president, and then 2 years as president at the BPU. And decided many years ago that I would run for mayor. So this was not a new thing. I really made the decision about 20 years ago and was looking for the right opportunity to do this. And family circumstances, political circumstances showed that this was the right time to do it, and so I made the leap. I will say this, my time on the Board of Public Utilities really strengthened a lot of my basic understanding and instincts about public service and about doing what needs to be done. And what was very clear when I came on the Board of Public Utilities was that there had been political problems and managerial problems. And unfortunately, a lot of the rank and file people were kind of just thrown under the bus for things that they had no control over. As did some of the people at the top who really were doing a great job, but because others were not, and the media attention that was given to them, mistakes that were made, they got caught up in that maelstrom as well, which is blatantly unfair, but it's very hard in the public image to separate that out. So it seemed to me the most important task facing the board and the BP was to reestablish credibility. And if you lose credibility in your business, it takes decades to restore it. For every bad experience someone has, it takes 3 good experiences to restore that trust and credibility. And so any time you get a leg up, you got to protect it. That's just simply the way it is. You cannot be cavalier with how you act, how you perform in the minds of the public. You have to take care of it. As you know, with your customers, you miss a phone call, you don't return a call, you may not get that customer back, and that customer goes out and talks to others. And so it's the same at the BPU, it's the same at the Unified Government. So the most important thing I felt about credibility is simply do this. Describe the problem as you see it. You could be wrong. Other people might have more or better insight. Fair game. But if you don't stick your position, if you're not straightforward with that, then you never engage the conversation. And so you have to come out and state the problems as you see them, as you experience them, and really encourage, and as board president, in fact, require others to state their position. Bring it up. Let's go. It's our responsibility to do that. So if in any way, emotionally, we're not up to it, we shouldn't be in that position. You need to step up, take responsibility, and have a straightforward, transparent conversation about what the problems are, and then to problem solve. So the first issue was credibility. And the first real challenge to the BPU, as I saw it at the time, was the financial status. My first meeting on the committee for finance showed we had 19 days cash on hand. Now, that's a pathetic position for a utility that serves 65,000 customers to be in. That's not sustainable. We were one accident away from God knows what. And for the BPU, as a public utility, we just can't go out and say, okay, we're going to raise rates and it's going to go up tomorrow. Even as a business, if you're able to do that, even if it's hard to do, you have to do that, you might be able to do that. It's not that way with the BPU. There's a legal process that has to be followed, has to be respected. And there's a time frame, a time lapse in that. So the first thing we had to do was deal with the financial status of the BPU. Making it even worse were the infrastructure problems facing the BPU. We had antiquated infrastructure. We needed to build new feeder stations just down here to the fiberglass station. We had to upgrade infrastructure in the downtown area. We're having repeated outages in our downtown area. We were experiencing, of course, growth in the western part of the county. We had to establish redundant infrastructure to those areas. So there were also major infrastructure problems. Plus, we needed to really look to the future to respond to the change in technology and really implement automated metering infrastructure, smart technology, smart grid. We had to move into that. That was a major expenditure. And as that is going on in 2009, we have a new president who promised us that we were going to be paying more for our electricity. Who promised us we would be paying more for our electricity. Because they were going to bring a regime of environmental regulation that was going to push the cost of coal-fired generation up, ultimately to drive generators out of coal. So the BPU was no exception. There were no carve-outs for public utilities. And so we had really kind of a triple whammy. So when we went out to look at a study to do for the rate increase, I should say rate adjustment, because it should be agnostic, but it's not. It was for a rate increase. It was very clear. In the past, the BPU would have proceeded this way. Look, we need 4%. Let's ask for 6. Because if we ask for 4, we're going to get whittled down and won't get what we need. I thought, that's not straightforward. I will not stand on that. Tell us what you need. Not a dollar more, not a dollar less. Because, and I will lead with that. And so Black and Veatch came back and said, you know what, you need to do 7% a year for 4 years. In order to improve your financial metrics, in order to get your bond rating up, in order to meet the environmental regulations, in order to meet just the increasing costs of daily operations, in order to meet the infrastructure problems, 7% a year for 4 years in a row on the electricity side, and then 8.5% for 2 years on water, plus 8% for 2 years after that. That was bold. And in fact, the industry standard is 7% a year. If you go beyond 7, what you're really saying is that you as a utility have had a catastrophe or are facing a catastrophe. So that was the upper limit. And so we did that. And of course, interveners, some of you, came to us and said, whoa, 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 this is not going to work. You don't need this, you don't need this piece. We said, okay, bring the evidence. There's a hearing process. And in fact, we provided an additional 90 days beyond the statutory requirement for hearings for evidence to be brought by interveners. Because we wanted to be straightforward, we wanted to be above board, and we wanted to make sure that people are not coming back to us and saying, we didn't have the time, we didn't have the capacity to respond to this. We wanted to forestall that narrative completely. And so we did that. As it turns out, days cash on hand. I haven't seen the latest report. Don, where's our latest days cash on hand? Sorry to put you.
Close to 70.
So close to 70. So, go from 19 days cash on hand to 70. Our bond rating is up, which reduces the cost of our borrowing. We have implemented and built the new infrastructure. We are working on upgrading our 69 kilovolt to the 161. We are bringing on new substations. We have implemented the automated infrastructure. Those are all things that need to happen. And the bottom line is this. The BPU's responsibility is to provide reliable power and safe water at the least burden to ratepayers. At the least burden to ratepayers. And we understood that every dollar that the BPU takes in does not belong to the BPU. It belongs to the ratepayers. That's its origin. That's got to be its destination. We hold it, we direct it, we make sure that it generates a return in improved service, again, for our ratepayers. That's our responsibility. And whenever the BPU veers from that mission, from that responsibility, that's when we start having problems. Now, one of the things And so I'm very proud, and I've never backed away from supporting and promoting that 7% increase. Never in the campaign did I do that, because that wouldn't be straightforward. It is what it is. Tell people the way it is. Be straightforward about it. People are going to complain no matter what. That's just the way it is. Suck it up. Take it on. As long as you're open and upfront and honest with people, they get it and they will respond. So that's what's got to happen in the same way in the unified government. Excuse me, I gotta take this off. Yes, this is my normal color. Not need to adjust your set. This is why everybody in my dad's family was called Red. There's a reason for that. The way I see things at the unified government, again, the central problem is this: how do we broaden and deepen our tax base? The development. So I want to say thank you to the Fairfax Industrial Association and to Capital Electric for your investments in this industrial community, in this industrial neighborhood. This is an essential part of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas. We need to continue to enhance the good that you want to do here. We have to make sure we don't get in the way. We have to provide improved service and reduce the burden on you. It's as simple as that. If we do that, this industrial community here will grow and generate even more tax revenues, which again then can be directed to their proper purpose. And so, thank you for all of you for investing in this community. And if you ever need any help doing something good and you run into an obstacle, please call. Because if it means we have to change our way of operating, then that's our responsibility. But let me speak then now directly to the problem of the tax base. We love what has happened out west. We love the redevelopment that has happened here in Fairfax. Those kinds of things will continue to come. I believe that the essential dynamics, especially of the Village West area, that will continue. Again, we make sure we bring the proper services to that area so that more who would like to invest will do that. And so as you know, there is a proposal for a convention center and really a tourism district just west of 110th Street. That's in the works. There is also the American Royal, which is relocating, as you know, and they're raising a significant amount of private funds for that. That's in the works. There is possibly other development that Kansas Speedway wants to bring to their property. That's going to continue simply because, as you know, the dynamics of real estate is when you get momentum going at the right location, it continues to draw more and more people in. We believe that's going to continue. At the same time, what really came clear in the campaign, and this was my instinct, but I was able to sharpen this during the campaign itself, is there's a real sense of neglect and abandonment from folks who live in the neighborhoods. We might have said previously east of 635. I think actually we're talking about 72nd Street East. There is a need to show and draw the line between the development that has happened in the county that is producing more tax revenues and development and care for neighborhoods elsewhere. KCK is not just simply going to be a landing spot for tourist attractions. For people who come from outside the community, spend their money, have a great time, and leave, my responsibility is to make sure that the quality of life for our residents, and that includes business residents, gets better. That's our responsibility. And so already revenues from the Star bonds are helping our neighborhoods. So if you look at the mill levy was reduced 2 mills 2 years ago, last year another 2 mills. Our initial discussions on our budget is we'd like to reduce another 2 mills. At the same time, property values have gone up, as you know. especially if you own a business here and you've got the property, you've seen your assessments come back. So an average about 6% countywide. I try to tell people that's a good thing. Increase in property values is a good thing. We don't want to be Detroit. We don't want to see the property values decline because no one wants to buy property. What this says to us is it's attractive. People are moving in, it's moving the cost of these properties up. That's a good thing. Now that does generate, obviously, more revenues for the city. So our responsibility, again, is to make sure that those revenues generated are either returned to the citizens in some form and, at the same time, are used to invest in improving services. As I drive through Fairfax, and as I've spoken with Marty and Steve and Melissa, I know you need more help with infrastructure here. That's clear. Those revenues help us do that. When you walk the neighborhoods, and it astounds me when I walk neighborhoods, how many places there are that the water runoff, for instance, crosses somebody's yard, tears out a little ravine, and then goes to a backyard of somebody else and then continues on. Those are the kinds of things that if we don't attend to those, then we're really saying to our residents, you know what, we don't care about your neighborhood, you shouldn't either. And so we have taken the star bond revenues and returned it in the form of mill levy reduction. We have also dedicated about $1.7 million to the SOAR program. SOAR refers to Stabilize, Occupy, Revitalize. How do we deal with blight? The Unified Government owns a tremendous number of properties that were our responsibility because they were tax delinquent, went to tax sale, or went to the land bank long ago, and the Unified Government was not doing a very good job on its own of boarding up those properties, cutting the grass, or demolishing them. Again, that communicates to the neighbors, you know what, you should care about your neighborhood because we don't either. So $1.7 million a year is a hefty sum, but it's going to have an effect. The best part, well not the best part, but one of the good parts of that SOAR program is the process within the Unified Government by which that came to be. And that was to take all the departments that had any touch at all with an abandoned property, blighted property, and the lack of communication among them, and the coordination now, and the gathering of data, and a strategic response, unified strategic response to those problems among all the departments. So that's a major improvement. That's our responsibility. So that's going to continue. But even more so now, we have real opportunities. Just as we've seen in Fairfax, the real opportunities here for further growth, further redevelopment. We need to continue to enhance that and accelerate that as much as possible. We have the same thing happening in our neighborhoods. And so we know, for instance, our downtown area, KU Med moving downtown has really sparked a lot of interest. And we intend to make use of that spark of interest and enhance that, take advantage of the opportunity of this moment. And so the strategy is this, to really identify specific things that the Unified Government needs to do to enhance that redevelopment in that area. In fact, I almost don't want to use the word redevelopment. I want to call it accelerated development. We know there are people who want to do good things downtown. KU Med going downtown. There, again, we continue to work on a downtown grocery. That is still in the works. We're getting closer and closer and closer. And the operator that is going to do this is being extremely cautious because they want to make money there. Huh? Who would have thought of that? That they're not expecting a continuous subsidy from the Unified Government. Again, part of our decision-making process is when we spend money, in what ways is this going to enhance the revenues that's going to generate even revenues for us to do even more for our citizens, either improve quality of life or in reduced taxes. That's our job. And so they want to do that. They're going to have some help from the Unified Government. Whatever investment we make in this has to generate revenues. There are others then who want to come in. It will attract more residents. I have guys I taught at Rockhurst who were telling me they're looking at Strawberry Hill for a house. 20 years ago, I'll tell you the story. I was at the Rockhurst auction. 3 of the broadcasters in the Kansas City area had the kids at Rockhurst at the time. We're just having a conversation. This is 30 years ago. Oh my God, I'm getting old. We were talking about local politics, and one of them says to me, oh, that's very interesting. Where are you from? I said, from Kansas City, Kansas. I kid you not, he said, really? You don't sound like you're from Kansas City. Thank you. I don't know what to say to that, but that's the image. Now, their children are looking for houses. The advantage we have, let's say just in the Strawberry Hill area, is first of all, proximity to downtown. People are being priced out of the downtown area. It's 5 minutes from Central Avenue over to downtown KCMO with relatively little traffic. That's an amazing advantage. There is the ethnic character of Strawberry Hill. We range from an increasingly Hispanic population on the south towards Central Avenue up through Strawberry Hill, which still has Croatians, it still has Bosnians, all the way up to the north side along Washington, where it's much more African American. That is a tremendous opportunity. It's walkable, it's affordable, and we have to bring amenities that want to settle there. So the idea is to really take this area and enhance the services we bring there to accelerate the development there. And the purpose then, at the same time, is to take the measurements. We take baseline measurements on property tax values, code compliance, police calls, social service calls. Take those measurements and keep those measurements going forward, because that's what the foundations want, and any investor will want to see that. And we can build a narrative that this is really happening, and we have the data to prove it. And as that interest continues to grow, we can then continue to expand the boundaries of that district. The bottom line is this: urban density is a tremendous source of revenues. We just were told last week that the number one revenue generating site in the city, sales tax, property taxes, is the Lane 4 development right across from KU. Per square foot or per acre, the number of revenues for that is greater than any other spot in the city. Again, it's because of density. That's what the experience is across the nation. So we have to take advantage of that. Does this get us out of our hole immediately? Absolutely not. But it is the strategy that's going to allow us a long-term play to continue to tip that equation, improve services, reduce taxes. It's a long-term play. And so really my responsibility anyway is to build a broad and deep consensus that we need to stick to these goals, which means, as you know, as businesses, yeah, we would love to do that project. We don't have the capital right now or the cash flow, so we're going to devote ourselves to this. We know this is going to work. It has to be done. As the revenues come in, then you can start broadening. But until that time, you really have to be laser-like. And that's got to be the consensus. So, again, I want to thank all of you for your business interest in Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas. And anything good that you want to do here, you need to bring to our attention. And my approach will be this: I will tell you what we can do, and I will tell you what we can't do. I don't like smoke blown up my skirt, and I don't like it blown up anybody else's skirt. It just doesn't work, and it does not establish credibility. And so that's what it's all about. People need to look at Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas, and if they come in and they try and do a deal here, I want them to walk away and they say, wow, I sat down with Unified Government, I sat down with BPU, I sat down with Chamber of Commerce, I sat down with Greg Kindle at Wyandotte Economic Development. And my experience was they will move mountains to try and make a deal work. And what they can't do, they'll tell you. What they can do, they will do, and they did do. And even if you walk away and say, you know what, I wasn't able to get that deal done there, but if I had a deal to do, I would want to do it there. That's the story that has to be told. Because the opposite is just taking us further down into that black hole. So, want to lay that out for you? Please send any kind of comments you want to somebody else.
Oh, your point number here.
I'm pointing to Lynn, my assistant. But anyway, I just want to offer that. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to take any questions. And Joe, if you want to go first, you go right ahead.
I will go first. I just came this morning from a tax appraisal. And, 2 days ago, I went to the state on the same thing in my home. Unfortunately, you said east of 72nd Street. I'm going to say east of Piper because there are no homes being sold east of Piper School District that have anywhere near the value that it would cost to replace them. They had to use, I used their figures to plead for a lower appraisal. We've got to fix that. Number one, it's USD 500 that has a very bad reputation, although I don't think they're a bad school district, but we can't get over that. And number two, people aren't going to buy an expensive home or even a moderately expensive home in Wyandotte County if the taxes are higher than Johnson County and the school districts are better. And when I was a commissioner, and when we built the Legends out there, the promise was when those star bonds were being paid off, that that money would go to reduce taxes. And that was a promise we made, period. And unfortunately, we couldn't keep it because we're not there anymore. And those monies didn't go to lower taxes. That would help everybody in this room if we had lower taxes. And some of it is because we don't seem to be able to quit spending money. Just like paying for we're going to pay for that grocery store that you're putting in the northeast area. Us taxpayers. It's not right.
Well, maybe, maybe not.
I don't have anything against the northeast area, but I do have against all the properties that are in the northeast area that are either belong to the land bank or their taxes are too low.
Right. And that's,
Or they're nonprofits.
right. And the problem with that is, how do you come out of that? Because when redlining occurred in the 1930s, pretty much all of Kansas City, Kansas was redlined, which means that people could not borrow money to improve their homes or purchase property there. And so a lot of those reverted to rental properties, which, as you know, sometimes the owner takes care of them or does not. And so over time, they just let them go, it ends up in the land bank, and now the unified government is responsible for it. And so that $1.7 million of that has to go into blight reduction. Because if we don't, then it just puts further pressure on the homes that continue there and the residents continue on.
It's 1.7 out of, what was it, 17 million?
Right, and then about 4.8 million has gone to tax reduction. So you're right, I know, the promise was that those revenues would go for tax reduction. It did not happen. And at the same time, we had the pilot went from, when I started the board, it was 7.9%, ratcheted up to 12.8. The promise was to bring that back down. It's still 11.9. And I know for businesses here, that pilot is very tough. The difficulty, and the commission would love to reduce the pilot, and what they're faced with is reducing the pilot 1% reduces revenues 3.4 million. If you reduce the mill levy, it's 1.2 million. And so they would love to reduce the pilot. The point is, right now, we're just not able to do that. That's why the long-term play is to invest in the neighborhoods and increase. There's a guy named Chuck Marone. If you get a chance, go to a website called Strong Town. And he makes a very strong case for urban density and why you need to continue to invest in your urban areas, because the density is what generates most revenues at the least cost of infrastructure. So he shows a thing. If you look at the development out west, I think there might be, originally, let's say KCK, there might have been, this is KCMO actually, I think there were 3 fire hydrants for 1,000 people in an urban neighborhood. That's like 54 fire hydrants for 1,000 people. Just those infrastructure costs, not including the water lines to feed it, not including the power lines, not including the streets. So urban sprawl actually puts a great burden on us because we accept the liability for that infrastructure once it's built out. We don't charge the property taxes required for someone who lives on a cul-de-sac, for instance, to pay for the replacement of their road. The curbs. It's spread out, and so it costs more, obviously, per square acre than something in an urban density neighborhood. So that's why I say the long-term play on this is to work on our urban density.
I understand that the density is kind of a siren call right now in a lot of cities because of the revenue base, but it's operating, I guess, on the assumption that there's a significant portion of the population that wants to live permanently in a multifamily dense environment. So, you know, where's the trade-off in the current single-family home rental market if you're subsidizing a PMIX development and putting all of this into the shiny object? What's the overall impact on the individual neighborhoods, and then what's the ultimate impact if it turns out not everybody wants to live stacked like cordwood? You know.
Well, I mean, I've lived in a mixed, in fact, that's where I spent most of my life after 1980, living in mixed neighborhoods. And I never felt like I was stacked by cordwood. I enjoyed that. In fact, if I get a chance, I'm moving back because I'm getting a little too tired of cutting my grass. But there are people who do want to live that way because it is affordable. So what has happened is they're not building affordable housing. They're not building entry-level housing because the price point is too high. All that's being built is the upper end because, first of all, since the last recession, the Great Bust, there's about a 40% reduction in home builders across the country. And so the remaining home builders are going to go where the dollars are, and the dollars are in the upper end home. So you're not getting into a home for less than $150 a square foot. That's my understanding. So what we have as an advantage is homes that are can be rehabbed and brought back in. And if we do that, we're going to start seeing those parcels come back. So it's not that you would take down, I think Chuck Marone makes a good point at Strong Towns. He says, the ideal is not to take down a neighborhood of $50,000 homes, scrape it clean, and put in $250,000 homes on bigger lots. The better play is to take $50,000 homes and bring incremental improvements so those homes are now $55,000 homes. That's a 10% increase in tax value and 10% therefore increase in those property tax values. Plus, it's more density, which allows you to generate more sales tax revenues in places that don't have the same infrastructure requirement. So, are there people? There is. Does everybody know that the suburban development is going to continue? That's not the issue. The issue is whether we also now start bringing what we need to do. If you look at it, the developments out west are subsidized. Amazon was subsidized. Village West was subsidized. 135th and Metcalf is subsidized. Let's be real about this. That's the way it goes. And if you look at some of the businesses that even Fairfax Industrial loses, let's say to Lenexa. Lenexa is subsidizing those businesses. And so it's not a question of whether you subsidize. The question is, what will those subsidies ultimately mean? Yes, sir.
Well, speaking of subsidies, you mentioned the New American Royal, and they are supposed to get the star bonds from the existing retail that's out there. And has anybody questioned that, whether that's actually going to pay off?
Well, no, the projections are, I mean, that's the thing. And I really do believe that, well, we have seen tremendous amount of growth and growth in revenues because of Village West, because of Schlitterbahn. You know, for instance, the car dealer, the auto mall out there, is actually producing about 50% more revenues than we're projecting. So that's a tremendous improvement for us. In fact, the location of the auto mall, the development of the auto mall out there is one of the reasons why there is backlash against the star bonds in the Kansas Senate. Because Johnson County legislators were complaining that, well, these auto dealers would have located out here if the STAR bonds had not been used for the auto loan. So it does work, it does happen, and I would say that Doug Bach has done, our county administrators have done a good job to make sure that these developments do pay as they move on. They do pay. In fact, that's one of the issues we're having right now. We're trying to figure our particular development out to see to what extent that will be true. And I will say this, the other thing is the pro formas that are put together, we really encourage them to be conservative. We really encourage them to be conservative because we don't want to get caught in that. So, thank you all.
Well, thank you, Mayor Albee. We look forward to working with you over the next 4+ years. And I don't know if you've had a chance, but I'll be getting in touch with you about the Fairfax master plan we've been working on. And a lot of that is we want to start working on really getting more reinvestment back into Fairfax and our infrastructure and getting some sidewalks and curbs that we've never had. And so anyways, we'll be talking more about that. So you're kind of speaking about that. So I appreciate that. So we're going to wrap up. We don't have any door prizes today. Sorry. Don't throw anything at me. I know you came for the door. But next month we have our luncheon is on Thursday, May 10th, and we have Mayor Sly James coming over from the Missouri side to speak. I don't know if you got a chance to attend the annual chamber luncheon last week, which was awesome. Again, thank you. And they had Mayor Albee and Mayor James up there together, and they were pretty funny. It would have been fun to have them here together, but this is nice. And so we're doing back-to-back mayors. And then in June, we're going to have, I'm going to be sending out to you all a deal, and I'm kind of behind getting it out, but I've been working on that master plan, but a workforce committee. Working with Workforce Partnership at Econ Avenue, which is a group funded by the Federal Reserve Bank, and Danica Rome with Wyandotte Economic Development. And we're going to talk about how to bring in employees, specifically from the Northeast area, that are maybe underemployed, that have good work ethic, but just aren't making very good wages, and how to get them into skilled paid jobs and into better jobs maybe here in Fairfax. So I'll be emailing that out maybe tomorrow, maybe Monday, but keep an eye out for that. Make sure your HR managers see it, because we want to get HR managers from Fairfax involved on the committee so we can grow this together, and then we'll involve the colleges as well as some other organizations. So that's it. Enjoy the day. I hope you can take the whole afternoon off. It's going to be great. Thank you.